Welcome to Jesse's EPP podcast, where we discuss controversial modern medical issues. Today's topic is preimplantation genetic diagnosis, or PGD. For our listeners who aren't familiar, what PGD does, along with other assisted reproductive technologies, is that it basically allows us to pick and choose the embryos that we want before we implant them into the mother's uterus. Exactly. And why is this technology so controversial? Well, let's start with the positive, shall we? If prospective parents are carriers of a genetic disease, for example, we can have a look at the embryos and make sure that their future child won't inherit this genetic disease. That sounds marvelous. But of course, there's a more sinister side, isn't there? Too true, too true. We have to be very careful about how we use this technology because it has the potential to cause massive social inequities. There's no question about the effectiveness of the technology, but we need to consider things like how can we make sure that access to PGD is equitable? Because if only the rich and affluent can create these perfect babies, then that's a massive problem for our entire social structure. There's also deeper ethical questions as well. Like who are we as mere mortals to, play God and mess around with our genome? And the pursuit of genetic enhancement over diversity is a really slippery slope. Which is why in Australia, the NHMRC guidelines limits the use of PGD to just a few users. Listeners can find the exact details in our show notes, but there's two questions in particular that I want to discuss with you today, Jesse. All right, Jesse. Well, what might those questions be? Well, let's start with the first one. It's the question of using PGD to select for sex. How is that even a question at all? I think the answer is pretty clear cut. Like, we shouldn't be denying any potential human being the right to life based on just their sex. And if we do allow it, then we're potentially allowing the perpetuation of sexism on like a societal level. Really glad that you feel so strongly. But believe it or not, there is one exception. You've got to be joking. No, no, not at all. So actually it makes perfect sense. The NHMRC guidelines allows the use of PGD to select against genetic conditions that would severely limit the quality of life of the person to be born. So if the parents are carriers of a severe sex-linked disorder, PGD can be used to select against the disease and by proxy for sex. Huh. That actually does make sense. Just to be devil's advocate though, how do we define severely limiting quality of life? How severe is severe enough? For example, I'm colorblind, which I admit is not severe enough to warrant PGD, but it does make you wonder where we should draw the line and how guidelines might evolve in the future. All right, that was baby stuff, though. Barely controversial. The next issue is going to be juicy. Oh no. It's about using PGD to select for a savior sibling. Sounds like a real double whammy of controversy. Okay, I exaggerate. It's not for savior siblings per se, but rather for savior embryos or savior fetuses. So you see, the NHMRC says that you can use PGD to select for an embryo so that when it becomes a fetus, it can take some stem cells from the umbilical cord to treat a parent, sibling, or relative. I should also add that this procedure is generally not harmful to the fetus. Surely there are limitations, though. Yeah, of course. Basically, the caveats are that there needs to be good evidence, verified by an independent body, that the person to be born will be welcomed into the family as an individual and not just a means to the end, and that the process of being a savior sibling is both medically justified and won't result in significant harms to their physical and mental well-being. Right, so I think that sounds really sensible, especially a second condition. But like, how does anyone go about verifying the future prospect that someone is going to be welcomed into their family in the long term? Like enforcing these rules seems like a logistical nightmare. For sure, yeah. I think that while the conditions sound very sensible and they seem to be well-meaning, it's a pretty dangerous game to play. I think I would have to agree. Well, folks, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Jesse's EPP podcast. Don't forget that you can check out our post-show notes for a condensed version of what we've discussed today. Bye for now, everyone. Peace out.